Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Derby City Council Cabinet on Wednesday, the 15th of June at 4 p.m. Thank you for everybody's attendance. Any apologies, please? No, no apologies. I don't believe there are any late items or receipts of petitions. Okay. Identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply. There are none. Declarations of interest, please. Councillor Schenk.
Thank you, Chair. Item 14, the Derby Nuclear Skills Academy. I believe I have a pecuniary interest in that, being an employee at Rolls-Royce.
Okay. I understand Councillor Pete Fields are going to cover it on your behalf, yeah? For your information, that's likely to come up sooner rather than later. I'm going to bring it forward in the agenda because... Okay. So, any other declarations? Oh, okay, then. Minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of May, which I've seem okay to me. Seconder from Councillor Smale. Recommendations from the Scrutiny Board. I have from last night a number of those which it's okay. So with Councillor Repton, I will deal with in the usual way by touching on the recommendations at each item, yeah? Okay, so that moves us on to, as I've just mentioned, I'd like to bring a couple of items forward in the agenda for one of my Cabinet members' benefits. So that makes item 10 the first one that we're going to deal with, which is Climate Change Action Plan. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report is bringing forward to Council the contribution of the Council as an organisation to our... Oh. Is that better? Thank you. Thank you, sorry. Yes, this report brings to members the contribution that the Council will play as an organisation into meeting the climate change ambition we have set as an organisation for the city. And that's really important to make that point. This is what the Council is doing as an organisation. And we know from the evidence that the Council contributes 2% of the carbon in the city. So it's a very tiny number we have indirectly in our control. But we have, as an organisation, as members will know, established a Derby Climate Commission, independently chaired, involving lots of organisations across our city to work collectively on all our best endeavours to meet some of the challenges that face us across the board. And there are key themes in there around transport, housing, business and community. And that has encouraged lots of activity and involvement from a variety of our stakeholders. So that's really important. This action plan is not that. This action plan is what we as an organisation do, because clearly we have a role in influencing, encouraging, role modelling what can be done by an organisation and recognising how we can behave differently that can make a contribution. So the work is being carried out very much by our team, but also working across the council. And one of the principles of the work we've been doing is to make sure that everybody in the council understands their commitment to dealing with the climate change emergency, so that every service is considering what the implications are for themselves around how they contribute to that contribution. And there has been a real collective conversation across all the services of the organisation to do that well. So we recognise we don't have the sophistication of understanding all of our carbon footprint, and so we are focused on where we have the most direct influence, where we can actually make a difference most directly. We've worked with APSI, Association of Public Service Excellence, on developing some of that sophistication of understanding that detail, and that's been really helpful. And many councils are struggling with understanding the nature of all the things they can do differently to try and make that difference. So we are recognising in Scope 1 and 2 that's a little easier, but in Scope 3 there is some more work to do to really understand the level of our contribution. And that's a work in progress. So the action plan is really looking at all the things that we have identified across the organisation that we can do to reduce our carbon emissions. Insulating our council homes, installing air source heat pumps, supporting the introduction of smart meters, and training our staff and our councils in carbon literacy. So therefore, there are a number of things that we have put in here that are complex and ambitious. We've tried to split those actions into 4 themes, so asset, processes, place and culture, and there are 15 areas around that. It is very detailed, and we have agreed it probably needs 2 versions. One is for external use and can be communicated to our city and show that we're making that impact, and also one a little bit more messy that we can use internally that can be constantly reviewed and changed and updated as we grow in our understanding and our skill and knowledge. There will be gaps, and we continue to close these. One is highways, where there are some carbon models out there at the moment they want to understand, and we're working with a number of similar authorities to really get to understand what that looks like and how we can use those new ideas that are coming forward that suits us, and we can embed them into our asset management. To help us to deliver this action plan, we've created 6 thematic groups inside the council, which will drive and improve the action plan with a diverse set of people from across the organisational services and disciplines, and we'll be monitoring that plan with our performance colleagues. We've also engaged our climate champions in this work, so they're our member champions, to help developing that and working through their ideas and their influence and shaping. We recognise this is a difficult and challenging arena for everybody, every organisation, and there will always be places where we can be challenged for not doing enough or doing it fast enough. The action plan sets out our intention. We wanted it to be an honest document, wanted it to be ambitious, and we hope it can be received in that spirit. As I said, it is a complex area, and we know there are many competing demands on us as a council, but we're still finding out what a truly decarbonised organisation looks like. But we are really positive and keen, and we have a real sense of commitment from the organisation to work collectively to address the ambition of the action plan and a range of the actions within it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, obviously, it's not an easy report to put together, into circumstances where it pleases everybody, whether it goes too far or not far enough for some. But I absolutely take the point that it's a starting point. It's a plan primarily for our Derby City Council. It's going to deal with the challenges, and it will be a case of work in progress. So it was considered last night, I believe, at the Scrutiny Board. Councillor Repton, did you want to? I think it's safe to say that the Scrutiny Board generally welcomed the report. Did you want to detail your recommendation that came out of it?
I'm quite happy with what's printed and members can read, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, in that circumstances, do we have any comments or questions in relation to this? Councillor Schenker.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Repton and yourself sum it up by our position on this as well. Generally welcoming this. It's a step in the right direction. It's a very slow step. The climate emergency was agreed in this chamber back in May 2019, asking for a plan to be drawn up by the end of that year. And let's not blame the pandemic, because that was after. I appreciate this is the council's plan, but the council's got a significant leadership role, I would have thought, across the city, and we can't forget that. We can't just say we have got no control of what happens across the city, because there'll be other items, even on today's agenda and future agendas, where the council will be influencing what happens across the city. So I think it's a bit of a greenwashing exercise, if I can use that expression, to say we can't influence other stuff across the city. Of course we can. And the major issue missing in this report, and Rachel sort of touched on it, it's something my colleague Councillor Peatfield has been raising meeting after meeting, and it's our response to transportation in relation to the climate challenge. We can't just say that's not something that the council can't influence. We set enforcement policy on various aspects of transport and highways. We set various restrictions and we manage the network. So absolutely the council should be in the middle of that when it comes to sometimes maybe unpopular decisions that have to be made to address this agenda. So it's really disappointing that's not picked up in more detail in our climate plan. But like I say, we generally welcome this, but I think we could have been a lot more ambitious. And the test now going forward is how robustly we follow this, but keep it as a live document and keep adding to it going forward, rather than sort of using it as a tick box exercise to say we've done a piece of work and move on from that. So we'll continue watching this carefully, but I would hope very quickly we can bring highways and transport initiatives to the fore and embed them within this climate change action plan, because the council, in my view, has got a huge leadership role to play on that front.
Thank you for that, and we certainly won't be shirking our responsibilities in the leadership across the city to help people to help with this issue. And as you say, Rachel clearly identified that highways and transport is work in process. Councillor Hassel, your portfolio and the recommendation from last night includes they ask that we give more emphasis to actions that the council needs to take to enable everyone across the city to reduce their carbon footprints also, including planning and transport. Is there anything in the recommendations that you can't agree with, or you do or don't agree with?
No, I'm quite happy with the recommendation, Chair, and I'd just like to add that the plan that as has been presented is a testament to all the hard work of the officers and the climate champions cross-party, I'd like to add, who have had some input into that. Referring to Councillor Shanker's points about our influence across the city, is just be mindful that we are in the process of producing a citywide strategy for the climate emergency, which should encompass those points that he makes. But other than that, I just thank everyone who's been involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. Well, yes, this was, I think, originally supposed to be here in December 2019, but 2.5 years down the line, but at least it is here at long last. It's certainly a foundation and a start, but we will have to build on it, and I hope there will be very upfront routes devised and publicised, whereby members of the public and anybody else with an interest can easily participate in the continuing development of this action plan. Thank you.
I'm sure the Climate Change Commission will help that happen as well. So, Councillor Webb.
I think it's fair to say that there is some information that members really ought to look at with regard to guidance on what Derby City Council and in particular Derby Homes have been doing around buildings and around energy efficiency. You will see in the report that wall insulation is due to be completed with the last few remaining homes waiting for that, and we have always been at the forefront of applying for grants, not just for Derby Homes but other homeowners around the city when it comes to insulation. When it comes to energy efficiency, again, Derby Homes is leading the building trade from the front in that. Solar panels have been an ongoing project. Energy efficiency with air source and ground source heat pumps have helped to reduce the costs of energy across our social housing stock in the city. So this is not just done since 2019. This has been an ongoing programme, and indeed we are looking through Derby Homes at the introduction of hydrogen boilers, which could be a replacement for existing gas-based boilers, and indeed energy firms are looking at producing hybrids that will be able to comply with hydrogen safety if that is future way in which boilers and heating goes. And again, you look at all the items that are green, and Derby Homes have led on most of it. So it's not something that's been done since 2019. It's been an ongoing programme, and the 30-year housing revenue account plan incorporates all of this and has been incorporating it for many years now. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, unless there's any other contributions, we have recommendations 3.1 to 3.2. Can they be agreed? Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 14, which is the Infinity Park Skills Academy. Infinity Park. Thank you. We'll just let Councillor Shanker exit, if you don't mind. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a very early briefing report for Cabinet on an opportunity presented to the City Council by partners, so Rolls-Royce, but also the Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, who we are a partner with, as we know, on Infinity Park. We're not asking for a decision from Cabinet, it's simply about understanding the context in which the Council is working. And the strategic context around this ask, if you like, around creating a Derby Nuclear Skills Academy is a result of that increasing importance of the UK's nuclear deterrent and the need for a skilled workforce to support the nuclear submarine operation across the country. And the real skills that we have in our very important local business in Rolls-Royce, who have that expertise and a really good understanding of the issues and existing arrangements running those operations. I would say it's a rapidly in developing environment, this context strategically. So what has come to the Council is a request and for a discussion about how we can support that by allowing the use of the iHub for this academy to be able to create apprenticeships in this technical field around nuclear technology and engineering, and particularly around the submarine fleet. So the implications are we repurpose our current iHub on Infinity Park as the Nuclear Skills Academy. And thus, we do place ourselves centre stage in terms of that skilled labour market for the future. Members will know that Infinity Park, and our ambition for that is to create an advanced manufacturing supply chain there, a hub for real technological organisations coming there and working as a cluster to really grow that market more generally, diversifying our economy and really playing on our strengths. So absolutely, it's in that sort of context that we see as an opportunity, and we are trying to work really closely with those partners to make this a realisation, this ambition. The intent of what the Academy will be used for is to run a minimum of 200 apprenticeships per year for at least 10 years. So you're talking about 2,000 highly paid, skilled apprenticeship jobs being created in Derby. A huge opportunity for us, and a real sense of that opportunity being grasped. There is a risk this may go somewhere else into the country, and we're really keen to obviously maintain it here. And it's central, if you like, to our economic growth strategy to build on our advanced manufacturing expertise, as we know, and to create more high-value jobs in our economy. So fundamentally, from a practical point of view, the implications for the organisation is that we need to have conversations with all of our 21 tenants at the iHub around relocating them to suitable alternative premises that are able to enable them to vacate to allow the academy to take place, but to recognise their implications for their own businesses. We are ongoing with conversations with those tenants now. Colleagues in the room may have more information on the detail of that. We have 21 tenants in the iHub, and they are, as a whole, absolutely supportive of the strategic importance of achieving this. There's a real sense of, yeah, we see this is a really good idea, we will help to try and do that. There are, however, challenges about how we make that happen. We need to understand what their alternative needs would be, where we can actually find ways to rehouse them, relocate them in an effective way, and that needs to be worked through. So far, we've got some very good positive progress on that, but it is work, it's still underway. We are absolutely in this report signalling our intent to work in partnership about this opportunity and working through those challenges, and we are doing that and working on the financial issues and any sort of subsidy control conditions there may be around the original grant that went into the iHub itself. So there are a number of things working through, but fundamentally I think I would say that the opportunity is a fantastic one for the city, and we recognise that, and we're doing our bit, if you like, in terms of it, about making it possible to use the iHub for this purpose. And quite intensive conversations are going on between Rolls-Royce, the Nuclear Advanced Manufacturing Centre, the University of Derby and the University of Sheffield to try to achieve that. I will take any questions, and also my colleague here, Simon, also been involved in some of the direct conversations with tenants. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Executive Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to welcome the proposals, which is good to hear. Several points to take out of your presentation, Rachel, is that we absolutely acknowledge that the proposal creates some potential issues in relation to the current occupants of the iHub, but just to be perfectly clear, those timescales were not of our making. The council was approached at a very late stage in relation to proposals, but we are absolutely working 100% at resolving those issues with the current tenants. And just to emphasise that no decision has actually been taken, that unfortunately, whilst the proposal has been welcomed by partners across the city, the simple fact is that we have to call for and assess a business case in relation to the usage and work out what will happen with our tenants before any formal agreements are made. And this paper, as you rightly said at the beginning, is a paper for information rather than decision at this point. But for me personally, I fully accept that this is a tremendous potential for the city. Like you say, 2,000 highly skilled apprentices trained in the city to go alongside the fabulous work that Rolls-Royce is doing should not be an opportunity we give up lightly. But we're working at top pace to accommodate that to go into the future. But the basic line is that to start an academic year in September is going to be a lot of work to be able to clarify the position, understand the business case, understand the costs and things which I agree with this report we should go forward and absolutely fully investigate the way that this will shape up. So on that note of very great positivity, I would ask if there's anybody else that has anything to say in relation to it. Yes, Councillor Peatfield. I'm sure you're going to tell us how much you would support this at the end of the day.
Of course. Of course I am going to say that, Chair. We absolutely 100% support and welcome such a positive opportunity for Derby. You know, there's no denying that the future depends on nuclear energy, and to have the Skills Academy here in Derby is indeed going to diversify our economy, and we certainly want to do everything we can to make sure that it comes to Derby and nowhere else. Having said that, it would be very remiss of us to not raise our grave concerns over the businesses that already exist in the iHub, businesses that we attracted to Derby, that we gave promises to with the development and the delivery of the iHub, with this fantastic building and unique opportunity. We were saying, come to Derby, we will support you if you come here, you will be able to build your business and make money. I appreciate absolutely that the window is extremely tight and not of our making. But there are questions to be asked on, how is it physically possible to move some of those businesses within that 3-month period without it having a really severe detrimental effect to their business, their continuity, to their profit. And I'd have to raise the concern about the pattern here of our administration possibly showing some neglect to our SMEs across the city. We start with the Beckettwell development and Padley and the decisions that happened there, which tried to push Padley a square peg into a round hole, and it didn't happen. And of course, there was a financial blowback from that. Dubrek was the next casualty, which almost, was a casualty. Luckily, we were able to step in and help there. The Market Hall, another big project, which has obviously impacted on smaller SMEs, very small, microscopic ones, and the Eagle Market. So there is a pattern here of we're not looking after our SMEs in the city, which is our backbone, which is our financial and profit-making and economic backbone of our city. And we must ensure that we're looking after those 21 businesses, those tenants that are in there. Some of them are going to really struggle to move within that time period because they have workshops that need accreditation. So my question, I have a few questions. The first is, the paper doesn't refer to who is going to fund any relocation costs, any business interruption or any compensation.
That's that's the process we are authorising to look into, part of.
Right. Okay. So before we make any decisions, we need to be sure that the council is not going to be liable for any compensation?
We're looking at the business case in detail. That's what we're authorising today.
Okay. What flexibility is there for the SMEs, for these businesses, these tenants, if they need and physically cannot move within that 3-month period?
As I've said, we're working with them on a day-to-day basis to support them as quickly as possible with whatever it is they need to relocate.
But in terms of the timescale, if they physically can't, what's going to happen to the academy in the meantime?
Part of the business case that we're looking into. Rachel, yeah?
Yes, as Rachel and indeed the leader have indicated, we've had individual discussions with the organisations, and we've got to remember that the iHub is made up of a mixture of offices, virtual tenants, and also workshops. When we started the engagement, and I was actually at the iHub when we started the engagement, there was widespread support from the SMEs for the opportunity this brings, not just in terms of the direct benefit of skills and nuclear, but the supply chain as well. We have met all of the tenants, and there is, at the moment, our understanding, we can move a lot of the tenants in our Connect Derby estates, so they can still have the support and serviced accommodation within the Connect Derby. We've had active discussion, as Councillor Peatfield has talked, with those with more specific needs, such as a calibration of Agwal and composite grading, which are major occupiers of the workshops. And we are working at how we can look for a solution with our partners, Rolls-Royce for University, and also in the time of the lease, because these are leases which have different end periods up to 2020-24, to allow them to both carry on their business, but also to meet their growth aspirations. Because the iHub is not necessarily our growth hub, it's about creating the opportunity for some of this innovation and supply chain to happen. At the current moment, I've got a RAG assessment of all the tenants. We are, a lot of the tenants we feel are green. Our discussions have been positive and we can work with them. We've got a number of discussions going on that we think there's a solution, and we're working very actively with probably only about 3 tenants to see how we can manage over the next 2-year period to meet their needs, our needs, and also the needs of the academy. So at the moment it's been a very positive engagement. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have some more questions, Chair. What alternatives were offered to Rolls-Royce, apart from the iHub, even temporarily? And where is the paperwork, please, on those alternatives?
None as far as I'm concerned. I'm aware. Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important to understand the context to this. This was something that Rolls-Royce have decided they wanted to try and bring to the fore. I was invited very late on to a meeting with Rolls-Royce and with other colleagues, and it was acknowledged by Rolls-Royce and others, and I'm quite happy to say it publicly, that the City Council was engaged far too late in the process. I think there was a view that perhaps they hadn't quite understood who owned the building and therefore hadn't taken the appropriate steps to engage the City Council appropriately in terms of their thinking and whether this was actually possible or not. So I don't think they've identified any other options, but I guess there are potential other opportunities. You might say that perhaps some of the space on the new development on Pride Park, that's St Modwyn, that's an opportunity for them. But they have identified this building, one, because I think it suits their purpose. Two, I think it's because it's quite it's an impressive facility. And what we've got to remember here is this isn't just necessarily about the UK. This could be, in terms of our own nuclear deterrent, which obviously right here, right now has taken on an additional significance. But the other thing is, of course, the US and Australian navies are also working with the UK government on growing particularly the Australians' nuclear submarine fleet. So they see this as quite an iconic building that they can present to people such as the US government and the Australian government. So this is a really massive opportunity for Derby, not just nationally, but potentially internationally. So this is what Rolls-Royce identified, and we are trying to work with them, along with the other partners, to bring a solution that meets everybody's needs. So at the moment, I'm not aware that they've identified an alternative facility. Now, what we don't want to be doing, of course, is suggesting that we want them to find an alternative facility, because they may decide that alternative facility is somewhere other than Derby. So we are, understandably, bending over backwards to try and ensure that this facility can be utilised for that purpose. But let me be really clear. The first thing I said in that meeting when I heard what their proposal was, absolutely see the strategic business case for it. It's a fantastic opportunity for Derby, but that cannot be at the cost of the other businesses currently situated in the iHub. And that's what I made very clear. There is a board that has been established that will oversee this piece of work. I will be on that board, and I will be making very clear that the City Council cannot and will not get to a position where those businesses they struggle. We will have to find a way of supporting them in the short to medium term. But as Simon has said, I think majority of them can be moved successfully. There are clearly one or two, maybe a few more, where that is going to be more problematic. But rest assured, we will do everything we can to ensure that those businesses are supported so they continue to be successful.
Anything else?
Thank you for that. It does lead me on to one of the risks at 5.1, actually. The funding of the iHub in the first place was for a specific purpose. And if we're repurposing the building, what is the risk of investors demanding their funding return?
As you say, the risk is identified in the report, and it explains that there is work ongoing to establish the circumstances around that. Simon might want to add a bit more.
As you'd expect, Chair, we have looked into here. The iHub was funded primarily ERDF, but also growth funds. We've looked at the conditions that was attached to it. We've also been in contact with effectively what used to be the Regional Government Office, but now DLUC, and we have made communication with them to seek their permission, because part of the funding agreement was not to change the use of a building without permission. So we are seeking that alongside as part of the due diligence, as you'd expect in developing a business case. Thank you.
But in the circumstances, Simon, we don't anticipate any problem because of the value of the potential new use?
If you have a look at it, it was originally for transport, innovation and supply chain. This is, again, as I think Paul and others have said, this is about advanced manufacturing. We've got to remember that just across the road, we've got the new nuclear AMRC building, so that's a many square foot building being created. So the synergy of effectively creating that technical expertise, that innovation, building up the skills of the future, does have a good read across to what we originally applied for. But as I said just a minute ago, we have to, under the terms of the agreement, seek permission, and that is what we are doing. But we would expect support from BEIS and other government departments about this initiative. And the business case, when it comes back, will have sought and hopefully obtained that assurance. Thank you.
So in line with this report, we are being asked to authorise further inquiries like this on this subject to bring back the detail in the report at a future date, yeah? Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final question then. Not that this is an issue of our making, but the constraints of the time frame that we have to work within here does raise concerns about our process, our decision making, the presence of scrutiny. I'd just like to ask Emily, what risk is there to the council that by acting in such a short time frame, are we at risk by not actually handling this properly, or by treading in the wrong place, making a mistake? Is there a risk of maladministration?
Councillor Peatfield, we're not dealing with it inappropriately. You've got the report. It's a report for advice and for authorisation to do just that, due diligence. Unless Emily particularly wishes to respond, I don't see the need, but it's up to you, Emily.
What I'd say is that the report makes it clear that there will be a further report to Cabinet that would be a full report setting out the financial terms of the transaction, the agreed terms with the other parties, and setting out the risks as we normally would. So that report will need to come before any deal can be finalised on this subject. So until that report happens, the parties will be moving it forward, but nothing will happen until the report, no final decision will be reached until that report's brought forward.
Okay, so unless Councillor Peatfield, you've got anything to add, having made your political point scoring attempts on this, would you like to reiterate your total support for the project? Thank you. So I've got a couple of others indicated. Councillor Repton, then Councillor Webb, then Councillor Skelton.
Yes, in terms of the Executive Scrutiny Board, there was a general feeling that if successful, these proposals will be a real shot in the arm for Derby and its prestige. As well as the thousands of new apprentices, it will create further opportunities in the defence and civil nuclear energy market, which is to be welcome. So this Executive Scrutiny Board welcomed these proposals, but as has already been discussed, we urge that existing businesses are given all the help and support that they need. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think we can say any more about supporting the businesses. We're absolutely committed to that. So, Councillor Webb. You know you're okay. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome what the Chief Executive has said. Obviously, that's answered quite a few questions. Obviously, I'm sure Rolls-Royce will want to do the right thing by the people, obviously, that they are about to displace from their in the iHub. But yeah, there's always lessons to be learned, but there are situations where opportunities arise out of the blue, and yes, it is uncomfortable for various people who are impacted by that. But then those people who have caused the impact obviously do have a responsibility to try their best to mitigate the effects on those who are affected.
So you wouldn't recommend we'd say no, go away, we're keeping it as it is?
No, I'm saying I very much welcome this, but you know we do have situations like this. That's life, isn't it? But you know, obviously people that cause not maliciously in any way, obviously not. But they're what they want to do, and in this case, it's a very good thing they want to do. Does have an impact on other people in the fact that they've got to move. But I think providing all the help is given to those people to make sure that they're not out of pocket or anything like that, then I think we could even get a win-win situation.
Agreed. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to just remind people and draw people's attentions to the potential, should this go ahead, of the opportunity here. So for me, as Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Skills, this is a really, really good potential opportunity for this city. We're talking about 200 apprenticeships a year over the next 10 years. We're talking about the social mobility that we have been working on for a number of years through the Opportunity Programme here in Derby, and this will be the icing on top of the cake, the potential there. It's absolutely critical that when opportunities come up like this in Derby, that we do our due diligence, that we seek the assurances that we can, but that we also work on this with positivity, with a strength-based approach to make sure that what we're doing is the best for our children and young people in the city. But also, if you read the report, it's not just for children and young people. It can be open for career changers. This could be, and should have, potential massive opportunity for people in this city. So I really welcome this. I'm looking forward to getting the future report to Cabinet, obviously with all those things that we've talked about today. But the proposals, for me, in terms of the opportunity for children and young people in this city, are just fantastic. And again, putting our children and young people potentially onto the international market, this is great news for our young people. So I really welcome this report. I'm looking forward to working with those people in the future, should that arise. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. You're very right to point out the potential benefits of this. This could lead to all manner of things. We might even get to the point where we would look to establish a training centre for space cadets or something along those lines. It's that out of the box, really. Okay. All that said, unless there's any other comments, then we have recommendations 3.1 to, sorry, is it 2.1 to 2.4? Can they be agreed? Thank you. Okay, so we'll then revert to the normal agenda. And it takes, oh, sorry, yes, thank you. Thank you. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we can begin. We'll go to the approval of the single discretionary award policy. Simon?
Thank you. This is quite a simple report. The Council annually approves its single discretionary award policy, and where there's changes which are often driven by government announcements which would impact on the execution of that policy, we bring it here for updates. So this one is in respect of disregarding any payments that households might get for £350 payment per month for hosting a Ukrainian citizen or family, because in order that it can be disregarded, we need to make this change in policy. So I hope it's not contentious, and the report basically sets out the background and asks you to approve the revised SDA policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Any comments, questions, queries? Councillor Barker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this just shows that this council can and will be flexible when such these matters come up. I mean, it's a policy, obviously, that is very close to the heart of those in single households and so forth. The situation we have at present, of course, would negate that if they, in actual fact, take Ukrainian refugees in. And it's a welcome that we have flexibility in our policies, and I welcome this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Skelton.
Yes, I'm just pleased, obviously, the officers have been able to find a way of legally doing this. Obviously, you can't sort of do it via other means. So, yes, it's very welcome.
Thank you. Any other contributions? In that case, we have recommendation 2.1. Can that be agreed? Agreed, thank you. So item 9 then is the council tax energy rebate discretionary scheme.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to try and explain this. I think members will recall that in February the government announced the support package, which they called a council tax rebate, but actually is an energy payment using council tax information. And our allocation is to support just over 100,000 properties in Band A to D in respect of paying the £150 across. Those in receipt who pay through direct debits and through the back system got paid at the end of May, and the application process and the assisted support line was launched through sending letters to those people who do not pay council tax through backs and direct debits. It's fair to say that the initial days of that we experienced very high levels of demand, which we responded to as actively and as quickly as we can. It's pleasing to note that that demand is tapering off because of the resource we put in to try and support it in its early days, but we are very keen, as I'm sure everyone in this room is, to ensure those payments after the relevant checks are paid as soon as possible. The government did, and this is the purpose of this report, give an allocation of discretionary funding for those who were not automatically picked up in bands A to D. The design of this scheme is up to the council to design here, whether it be for particular groups or to provide top-up payments. And the criteria that we're using is obviously detailed in the report, and we'll be using some of the principles of the Household Support Fund in trying to achieve that. So the eligibility criteria, of which only one category payment will be made, even if you fall into a number of categories, is set out in 4.6.5, which talks about potentially 18,878 households potentially being eligible to secure a payment through the discretionary fund, though inevitably as it opens we'll see the level of activity that comes through. The report also suggests that if there is a residual amount left at the end of that in the discretionary award, we link it into the household support fund. So it's complex in local authorities, we're given this as a new responsibility, but in discussions with the portfolio holder and in discussions internally and the lessons learned of how we've distributed significant monies through COVID and since, I think the proposals in this paper achieve the objective of to be as equitable as possible, exercise the discretionary award and hopefully maximise the support that our households can have in respect of the current energy prices. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think the first thing to say is to commend yourself and your team for their work and what is a tricky scheme to develop and the hard work that government have put onto us in terms of dealing with these, the latest in a series of funds designed to help the public. This clearly is designed to make sure that the discretionary element of any funding that we can deal with goes to the right people, those people that need it most. And I certainly would commend the report so far. Martin's waving at me because Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and did come up with a recommendation. Did you want to expand on that, Martin?
Yeah, if I could just explain why that recommendation was there, and that was to certainly welcome the report, but also urges Cabinet to write to the Government, urging it to refund all or part of the additional revenue to those hard-pressed families facing staggering increases in petrol and energy prices. What we were referring to is the refund or part refund of VAT and other taxes on fuel, including gas, electricity, oil, diesel and petrol, must be considered by government, where all the extra increase in VAT, at the very least, on these products should be refunded to the millions of hard-pressed families and those thousands in Derby during the cost of living crisis. The government has belatedly taxed energy companies, and the government, to avoid charges of hypocrisy, should now in turn refund the additional revenues that they've collected on these products as a result of increases in VAT and other duties. And it's been estimated by some that this could amount to £1,000 a year or £20 a week. And I think this should be taken seriously, because if we look at petrol at the moment, at £1.90 a litre, 90 pence goes to the government in fuel.
Martin, sorry, I think we know the breakdown of the petrol thing.
No,
but I actually don't see its relevance to the discretionary.
Well, I think it is, because I think we have a duty on behalf of the people that we represent to welcome this, but we have the opportunity to use this to actually contact government and make this suggestion, and that's what the Executive Scrutiny recommended last night. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I welcome your thanking us for the proposed discretionary scheme, but I can assure you that every opportunity that we as a council get in contact with ministers, with MPs and whatever, we are emphasising the significance of the cost of living crisis, but actually VAT levels and details on petrol and stuff are not within our remit. There's nothing we can do to affect that, and unless Simon, you any comment on our ability to influence such things?
Nothing to stop us recommending it, though, Chair, is there? If we are concerned.
The government financing does not generally hypothecate tax revenues to particular initiatives, and it's the way the government works. Councillor Repton is right in respect of that in both fuel and energy. There's a tax yield that is generated from there. When the government announced recently their support, especially to the more vulnerable people on benefits, it was a significant amount derived from the tax pot to put back into it, and I think the benefit payments to support are going to be made in the next 3 weeks. It's not to say that it addresses all the issues, and I don't think anyone in this room would say that is the case, but that's not a remit of this local authority to influence, but as you have said, Councillor Repton, it could be a representation we make to the government if it's a will of the council.
Yeah, so Chair, I would
as you say, Martin, there's nothing stopping you making the recommendation for the Cabinet to decide whether they want to act on that, and we won't be writing to the Minister on such single issue. Councillor Skelton.
I was just wondering, obviously, for all there's estimates of the number of households that are going to be benefiting from this. Are most of those on direct debit, or are we having to do the whole process again of trying to find them and get their bank account details? And also, in the process that we've been through in the last few months, have we managed to get more people onto direct debit?
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. When we publicised that you could get the energy rebate quicker by direct debit, I think the increase in uptake of direct debit was between 4,000 and 5,000 households. So it had a positive impact, and obviously, hopefully, by managing it where possible for people through direct debit, it allows that particular outgoing to be better planned and everything else. Traditionally, 60% of our people pay through direct debit and 40% pay through a variety of means. The report details that we will automatically try and award these to people. So if we have the bank details, we can pay. So if you're in receipt of council tax support and you pay your proportion through direct debit, we hope to get that payment out quickly as a result of that. But we will have to do a series of checks to make sure that, for example, the homeowner is still there. So when we were doing the original scheme, we paid it in May to allow us to make sure that the April direct debit was taken out to prove that we were paying out to the right people. I know John Massey and his team are really passionate to try and make sure that this money goes to the most vulnerable as quickly as possible. And we've designed the scheme not to mean that people need to apply, but logistically it will mean that some people get paid quickly and some people we will have to satisfy ourselves that their details are accurate and we're paying the right people, and to prevent fraud, so which is all part of good governance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate some of the words that you've just said in relation to Simon and in particular John Massey's team for the Revenue and Benefits team, who have obviously had to work tirelessly for the last 2 years for the provision of grants, funding, money allocated to various businesses, households. It's been a really challenging time for them on top of their current natural duties that they have to fulfil. So just a big thanks to them. Just to reiterate that, like you said, Chair, that we are constantly lobbying government about, the cost of living crisis. We understand the impact that this is having on. We don't know what will be coming down the road. We don't know what more additional funding. I mean, it does seem to come quite late to us, and it is quite helpful that this time round that the next wave of funding and support that are going out to our vulnerable residents will be provided in the current set of benefits or revenue that they come from. So it is welcome that it gives the opportunity for our council tax team to fulfil that £150 energy rebate that we are having to do individually from the letters that we've sent out. Obviously, this is an additional discretionary scheme, and obviously it's been well detailed by Simon. Obviously been in contact with me quite regularly about how we bring this forward, but it is a welcome report to try and get this money out as quick as possible to those that most need it in Derby. Thank you.
So, unless there's anything to add or further comment, we actually have recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Can they be agreed? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This report hopefully is not too complex for members. It's a clear legal requirement for the organisation as a flood risk area to contribute towards the Environment Agency's flood risk management plan for the Humber catchment and river basin. It sounds slightly strange to think of us having an impact on the Humber down here in Derby, but it clearly links across the country in terms of how you manage the flood risk around the whole of that catchment. And there are 15 river catchments that all play a part in, all the way from the North Yorkshire moors to the north to Birmingham in the south and the Pennines in the west, that actually cover the impact of the Humber. So we are required to work with the Environment Agency to make sure we are aligned into their overall plan to reduce that flood risk across that whole catchment. This has been really effective because it allows us to work with other organisations across the local, that catchment area, other councils, to learn their skills and knowledge, as well as ensuring we've got a coherent plan that joins up our flood risk plans across those neighbouring areas, and we're using that collective power to reduce those risks. The specific actions that are required for Derby City fit already into our own local flood risk strategy. They're set out in 4.7 for members, and some of those have been carried over from our previous flood risk management plan. Others come from meetings with the Environment Agency, and very much about aligning these things together so we're not seeing them as separate and seeing the overall contribution they can make. Some other of those things I mentioned in there are sort of decoupling highways and private drainage and introducing natural flood management measures come from newer and national emerging policies and priorities about how we can slow water speed down by creating natural, bends in rivers and that sort of thing, rather than always hard concrete flood defence. That's sort of the adaptation of those actions are in that context. We're already undertaking many of the actions through our flood defence capital strategy. Some actions will require us to explore and access future funding schemes and resources. And we recognise that's recognised by the Environment Agency. And we report as part of all of that catchment to the Environment Agency on our progress, and we work across the board around that to oversee that plan. So really we're formally required to approve and sign off the Environment Agency's Humber Basin Flood Risk Management Plan, and that's a delegation in this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, as you know, there were some queries about our involvement with the Humber area, but we've clarified those. And but seriously, we have also raised some issues around prioritisation in terms of dealing with flood risk in the city and being realistic about the costs that we can and the priorities in relation to that. So any exec scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? In that case, then we have recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Moving on then to item 12 and the former Ada Bliss site on City Road. Rachel.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think sort of following on from our debate about the Nuclear Skills Academy, a very sort of similar perhaps opportunity here, in a way perhaps that the council is working to take opportunities, be flexible, be imaginative and work in an agile way to try and make things happen for our city. So very much this is an opportunity that's come to the council, and we are trying to grasp that with both hands. So what's happened is we have a global but UK-based film production company in Marv who wish to bring a significant film studio and training facility into the city. I think this plays really strongly in terms of the council's approach to how we build on our creative sector. Clearly our recent long-listing success for City of Culture, we recognise the power of culture to regenerate our city and to create jobs and in the supply chain and be a really positive force for good. So it fits into that context. The organisation recognising this opportunity is the Marv Studio franchise. They have an international reputation. They run the Kingsman films and other films mentioned in the report. They have international reputation, obviously. And critical to them bringing the opportunity here to Derby has been the role of a prominent and high successful Derby resident, Damien Waters, who is one of the international leading stunt actors in the film industry. And he also runs the City Gym at Chapel Street Car Park in Derby and is from Derby. So he's been very much part of bringing opportunity into the city. This would position Derby as a key player in the film and TV media sector, and that is a really important opportunity for us to diversify our economy and our labour market around that really critical national industry. They will be bringing £13 million of investment in to achieve this opportunity. And just for very much context for members, the UK film and TV media industry is worth, over £1.5 billion to the economy. And at the present, we know that only 1% of all the UK film production actually happens in the Midlands. So what can we do to play our part in trying to really bring more of that into the Midlands and into Derby particularly? I think it's really just positioned us in a way to take advantage of that opportunity. And it is broader than just this opportunity. I think it will create a supply chain around what's happened in the centre itself, and it links very much into the BA degree course that the university run on film and media, and also the Film Academy, the BFI, run through the quad in the city. So really positive, and also opportunity to support the community locally. So the opportunity that they're bringing is to bring a film studio onto the Ada Bliss site, a stunt training academy, and a fitness and rehabilitation centre. Part of the final part of that, the Fitness and Rehabilitation Centre, will be open to local residents to use, so more than just the media and film sort of actors. We've had really positive consultation with community locally about the impact of doing this, and very, very supportive feedback from the community. We recognise the site is problematic in terms of its brownfield nature and its historic, use, industrial use. So the existing housing scheme that was developed for this site is still there. We recognise how that's very highly costly. The unit cost per unit is quite difficult and quite problematic. So this does seem to be a really positive alternative use for that site. It doesn't mean we're not committed to finding additional units, sites to create those units for social housing, because they are also really important, but this site may not be the best opportunity to do that. Economic benefit we would get, I've mentioned the 13 million in terms of that investment. The annual spend across the economy and the supply chain identified as being around sort of 9 to 12 million, 30 to 40 staff posts created, 270 staff working on site at different times, coming in obviously internationally into the city to work on particular films. That would really improve obviously our visitors to the city in terms of hotel use, etc., and associated uses. We have assessed the risks to that, and we've put effective mitigation, I think, in place to try and address those. And I think the opportunity is nationally significant. In terms of the recommendations for the report, is to approve the disposal at market value of this site to MARV, and to approve a grant, very much in terms of our Derby Economic Growth Fund parameters, of £303,000 to support that, bringing that investment into the city. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Another great opportunity for the city, and actually there are quite a few similarities between the situation on this and that at Infinity Park. We've had a little bit more notice of the potential suggestion for this proposal, but again, it's one of those situations whereby we have to ensure due governance issues, due diligence, and consideration of a full business case to identify its suitability. Rachel, you touched on the fact that we've already engaged with the local community, and it's been received very positively at some public engagements, but we do have the outstanding issue of the consultation in relation to the housing, which, as you say, has got issues around flooding potential and around financial viability, but we will need to take that into consideration when a report comes back on this with the details. It still will be subject to planning and to a full business case and a deal, and the ratification of the deal with ourselves. And in fact, there are also issues around the funding that we used to initially buy the premises in the first place, and its potential use, again, which are not insurmountable, but we will need details of in a report. So it went to scrutiny last night, and ultimately scrutiny welcomes this exciting proposal and hopes that, if possible, it can be fast-tracked through the system. We wouldn't do that. We've got governance procedures to follow and things like that. We need to make sure it's all done properly, don't we, Councillor Beefield? Oh, she's gone. So I'm sure that we will treat this with due diligence and as quickly as we can. Yeah. But it seems that it's a preference for the public of Chester Green, which will obviously...
It will perhaps be helpful if I go through the recommendations first, Chair, and then you can make your comments after.
Is there anything you'd like to say in addition to the recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, certainly last night the board welcomed these exciting proposals, and they do hope that they can be fast-tracked through the system so the company can get on site as soon as possible. They are in my own ward, in Darley Ward. There were 2 roadshows, presentations in Chester Green in recent weeks, and these are all received with overwhelming enthusiasm, positivity, which I share. Rachel's outlined the many benefits that there will be both to that particular area, but the whole of the city. And it does put Derby on the map, not only nationally, but internationally as well. The job opportunities, the inward investment, and I think the knock-on effect for other aspects of the film industry are all possibilities. And the thought that we could have A-list celebrities strutting their stuff down City Road over the coming months and years fills many people with excitement. And certainly in Darley, we've already labelled it the new Darleywood rather than Hollywood. So we're looking forward to it, and we hope that the City Council will do whatever it can to make sure that this is successful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Martin, for repeating what's already gone in the Telegraph on your brilliant idea for Ada Bliss. Anybody? Any other comments or questions? Councillor Shanker, yes. Would you like us to fast-track this at all costs?
Well, I'll start by your commitment to bring back a full business case, because the report doesn't actually state that. You made promises to bring back a full business case for Beckett-Well Arena and went back on that promise. So if you want to sit there and have cheap shots at Councillor Peatfield, I think you just want to reflect back on your record. But I welcome not just this proposal, but your commitment to bring back a full business case. And maybe you want to alter the report to add that recommendation. I welcome these proposals, and I think we need to give credit to officers across the council, whether that's in our regen team, our property team, legal and finance, to allow this report to come here and this idea of this investment. It is very exciting. It diversifies, as Rachel says, our economy, or helps to diversify our economy here in Derby, creates business opportunity, attracts new business opportunities as well as encourages people into different forms of leisure and possibly new careers. Having said that, and I hope it can be delivered, there are a number of risks identified in the report. I won't get too excited about American investment coming into the city. We've had some bad experience of that recently, so let's just keep our feet on the ground, I would say. But on a more serious note, there are risks with this, and they are identified. I think it's at 10 point, or some of the mitigation factors are identified at 10.3 in the report. But again, that speaks about proposals in the heads of terms for disposal to condition the planning approval, all 3 elements of this proposal, and buying back a buyback clause in 5 years' time. I just wonder why it's 5 years' time, and if everybody is so keen to move ahead with this so quickly, why isn't that buyback clause a shorter duration, which would hopefully make sure this moves at a quicker pace. And the reason I say that, Chair, albeit £13 million worth of investment, I'm always a little bit suspicious. Well, if somebody's investing £13 million, why do they want £303,000 grant from the council? And I note the payback of the grant isn't conditioned at 10.3 if these proposals don't happen. So really happy to welcome these. I really do hope it happens here in Derby, but I just think we should go into this completely clear and make sure the agreements that we have with Marv, and then again, interestingly, it refers to another appropriate entity. So I'd really like to understand, and maybe this comes out in the business case that you've promised will come back, who are we actually entering into agreements with? Because it's not quite clear in the report, and I just don't think it's acceptable to say in the report, given that we are investing over £300,000 worth of public funds, to just say it's an appropriate entity. That could be a one-man band, it could be somebody else, and it just opens for me another potential risk. The other part of my concerns, Chair, I'm sure you can understand, and again Rachel has touched upon, is the loss of the affordable homes, and let's call them homes rather than units, please. We all live in homes and not units. I don't really, I never have liked the word units when we start talking about cheaper homes. People do have to live in these homes. But again, £473 worth of abortive costs isn't a particularly welcome sum of money for this council to absorb, given our current financial position, and then the risk of the £825,000 DLUHC grant, which the council has received for this. So how we absorb those into our already precarious financial position. If officers could expand on that, I'd appreciate that as well, Chair. Thank you.
So you've raised one or two points there that I think probably Simon is best placed to respond to directly, but just for the avoidance of doubt, when I say a business case is going to be produced, yes, a business case will be produced, but the report makes it clear and gives the delegations necessary for this to be progressed without it coming back to Cabinet. The detail of any arrangements, financial arrangements with the in the deal will be made available to those on a confidential basis, obviously be pink papered or whatever potentially, but this report is asking for the authority and delegation to be able to deal with that in the process of due diligence and establishment and looking at a business case, and from my point of view, dealing with the issues around the lack of the housing. I think Councillor Webb might want to say something around that, the housing homes, not units. So just for clarity, but Simon might want to add to that a bit about the process who we're dealing with, and particularly the business loan grant. It's in line with standard practice to support proposals like this in terms of business support. Simon.
So thank you, and Chair, you did describe that the first recommendation talks about the second recommendation to approve disposal on the basis of agreed heads of terms, and the heads of terms sets down a series of conditions that need to be satisfied with the evidence, and which is why the delegations are to myself as the sort of owner for assets, along with the portfolio holder for assets, to undertake all necessary actions to authorise the terms of the sale and to square and to make the appropriate accounting entries in line with professional codes. And you appreciate that we've already assessed how this would be treated in respect of both the impact on the HRA and the general fund. So when we talk about business cases, making sure that all the due diligence and all the conditions are met to allow this transaction to go ahead, as the leader has said, is not recommending bringing forward a conclusion business case for subsequent approval. This is to the recommendations set out what we are trying to bring forward as quickly as possible. The 5-year term that you've mentioned is, I think, sensible, because this site will be developed. There's basically 3 elements to the site that the MARV proposal is trying to do, and obviously we have to give sufficient time for that investment to happen, but also safeguard a reserve position if that proposal wasn't to go ahead in full. And we have been stressing it's the 3 elements that need to go ahead as part of the package. In respect of the grant we're giving, we are required under, again, accounting codes of practice to satisfy ourselves that the disposal is at market value. That has been assessed at just shy of £500,000, and if there's a difference between what their offer is and the market value, and it has an economic growth or economic potential for the city, we have the ability and the power to make business grants, as we have done through targeted DGF funding and other routes in the past, to bring jobs and bring economic gain into the city, and the report details some of that economic gain. Some of this funding we intend using DGF funding, subject to that appropriate governance, to minimise the impact on the council taxpayer of Derby. I think the report and the special report in the private session gives enough financial detail to satisfy ourselves that we know the impact of this transaction. It's been assessed both professionally in terms of economic growth gain and, as I think has been said, the bringing again a new sector into the city of creative industries has to be beneficial to Derby in the long run. Thank you.
Okay, so subject to any further questions, and second go, Councillor Shanty. Yeah.
Yeah, just one point not
I'm in
covered
a generous
by
mood today.
either yourself or Simon was my recommendation that the award of the grant should also be conditioned to this actually happen. Are we planning to give them this money up front and just wish it happens?
It's not what is currently in the heads of terms. In reality, to bring it forward, and there'll be design work and other bits that they will carry out, this grant is enabling, if you want to call it, what is a much bigger package of investment. I think it was over 12, 13 million to be invested. So I'm not sure exactly, are you asking that the heads of terms get amended to say that the awarding of the grant is conditional?
I take your point, Councillor
Can I
Shanker, but
answer
my
Simon's question?
yeah, second, just give you the information I've got is that my understanding is that under the heads of terms agreement that there will be clawback conditions so that if they don't comply with the conditions of the heads of terms, i.e. don't follow through, the grant could be clawed back. So, Simon, your thoughts on that?
I'd need to just satisfy myself in terms of the heads of terms. But in principle, we would hope that if it did not progress, we would not be have a detrimental impact on giving money. But I'd have to check the heads of terms, Chair.
As far as discussions have taken place so far, any grant would be on the council's standard grant terms, and standard grant terms include clawback provisions, which would say that in the event of non-delivery of a specific element, then there would be potential to claw back grant monies. That's our standard grant arrangement. And you would normally have that provision in any grant we entered into.
Thank you, Chair. I think that discussion was probably just demonstrates it was worth raising that point, because I don't think anybody seems absolutely clear that the grant is conditioned. So my recommendation to Cabinet would be either at 10.3 or in your recommendation, just make it really clear and add that condition of the grant to make sure the scheme has got to be the scheme is delivered or the grant could be clawed back as well. I think it's just a simple request, and I think you're agreeing with me, Chair.
We can certainly build something in along those lines, no problem.
Councillor Shanker, paragraph 10.3 states that the grant support offered is conditional. So that's what it says in bullet point 2. So the grant support, it says the grant support offered being conditional on all three elements of the proposals being delivered. So that will mean that will therefore mean that, as I said, the grant agreement will set out clawback provisions so that in the event that it is not delivered, you would have clawback.
So maybe just some clarity and spell that out in a bit more detail. Okay, point well made, shall we say. Right. Yes, Roy. Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chair. And I do note the loss of 74 units on this site, because some are homes, some are units. It's a mixed tenure site. So it's my wish that the authority does make provision for those 74 homes elsewhere in the city. And having dealt with this all the way through, it has been my proposal to Cabinet that we had a twin track process on this site because initially we had an out of the blue approach from a Marv representative and nothing happened for quite a while, and we carried on with the development proposal of housing on that site, and we're at a position now at REBA 3 whereby if the Marv proposal did fail to come to fruition, then the authority would be able to take back the site and to use it for housing purposes, or may well do that, but the costs of each home was reaching our top limit within the HRA barriers. As you know, there's got to be a payback within 40 years. So we are close to that, and it would be one of the most expensive social housing sites in the city if it was developed because of the constraints around it, particularly with the flooding issue. But having twin tracked this, Marv have come up with a reasonable proposal, and I'm prepared to support that proposal as long as we get 1-for-1 on housing in the city for the HRA, and that if indeed it doesn't come to fruition, that site can be put back for redevelopment and again on housing grounds. So I really do welcome it. I mean, we saw what Lara Croft did for this city, so hopefully Marv and Kingsman and Rocket Man and whatever else they've produced, really brilliant films. I've seen those three and thoroughly enjoyed them, and Councillor Repton did ask me if I was wanting to be a stunt double, and I did reply to him that only if it's for somebody in Last of the Summer Wine.
So, on that note, let's not water down our support for this. We think it's another fantastic opportunity. We have and we will take into consideration the views of residents and partners and things, and we will absolutely nail down the situation in relation to the housing consultations. So we are very, very supportive of it. As Roy says, it's already been twin tracked. We're not going to be fast tracking it at the cost of ignoring governance and due diligence in it, but we will be prepared to deal with it as quickly as possible so as to encourage Marv to follow through on this and provide a great facility for the city. Matt, sorry, did you want to come in on this one?
I think really, Chair, you've summed up all the points I was going to make in that sum up, so yeah, I've nothing more to add.
I'm sorry. Okay. In that case, we have 2.1 to 2.6 to approve. As quickly as possible, Councillor Repton.
Thank you, Chair. There's 3 items on the contract in front of finance and contract procedure matters. The first one relates to acceptance of funding for the multiplier scheme. So earlier this year, the government announced allocations to authorities for both shared prosperity funding and the multiplier scheme. The multiplier programme is designed to improve math skills, life skills and maths literacy. We already do some wonderful work in the city through Derby Adult Learning Services in respect of this, and there's no requirement for match funding. So 4.1.4 talks about we're proposing to prioritise that roughly 400,000 a year in life skills, employability skills and progression to level 2 maths. So that's welcome as part of the agenda to improve job opportunities, social mobility, and also people's ability to manage their lives with the added benefit that numeracy and mathematical skills will give them. The second area here is for large format digital advertising. Members will be aware that we have sort of traditional billboards, and we actually have a very good commercial advertising offer around the city, but we have no digital billboards on the estate at the moment, and what the report is asking is that we can, well, we've looked at undertaking a flexible procurement approach using a framework which is already in place in Salford City Council, a leader in digital advertising, and the report later talks about the benefits that will give, both financially but also as part of a contract. As with current contracts, we negotiate to use the advertising space free of charge to free our campaigns, so you'll see advertising spaces being used for things like fostering and other schemes in the past. So that again looks to be broadening our ability to provide advertising across the city and to gain a small financial gain from it. Paragraph 4.3 onwards is acceptance and use of Arts Council's external funding from the Museum Estate and Development Fund. We've identified through our surveys and through our partnership with the Museums Trust the need to invest in our museums, where there's water ingress into the building and many other aspects. And working with the Museums Trust, we put in an ambitious bid against a relatively limited pot that this MEND programme had, and we were successful in securing what we asked for, which was £750,000. And again, that will be really important to protect the historical building fabric, but also our art collection. And you know that we've got a series of leading arts and museums collections within the city. The report details the funding package, which is just over 2.2 million, and how this £750,000 contributes to that. So really it's helped us to unlock that next stage of making our museum estates both secure but also more fit for purpose, and I think that's really positive, and credit to both the Museums Trust and our property team and our cultural team in securing that funding. And the final, I think I said there are three, so there's four aspects in it, so my apologies for saying there's three, is Kingsway Roundabout financial contributions in addition to the capital programme. I know this has been raised in previous committees. We've been in dialogue with both Tiller Homes and Homes England over highways work, and sort of what council officers have been working with both bodies to develop an outline minimum satisfactory scheme, and with initial delivery cost estimates of between £500,000 to £600,000. The report details a bit of background to that. It's recommended it's added to the capital programme, and also to approve the use of £544,000 of Section 278 agreement funding for the Kingsway Roundabout, with the remaining £56,000 to come from the Highways Transport Capital Programme budget. So the recommendations are detailed in the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. I'll bring in a second, Martin, if that's okay, because I think Councillor Williams wants to comment on relation to the first item, the maths multiplier.
If that's all right, Chair, thank you. I just want to say that this is a really exciting proposal. I would like to thank the DALS team and the leadership that they've shown in this and the creativity that they've shown in these proposals. And to draw your attention to 4.1.4 in terms of the prioritisation that the team are looking on there, so the life skills, the employability skills and the progression to level 2 in maths. Again, with the cost of living crisis that we're in, we are working in partnership with our voluntary organisations to deliver that training, to look at things like debt awareness, debt management, but also innovative ways of working with our cultural partners to have a look at the ways that we can actually enjoy and understand maths, which I have to admit is really not my forte. However, this has been a really exciting proposal to work with, and I think there are going to be people across the country looking at envy with the multiplier in Derby. So thank you to that team for doing the outstanding work there.
Thank you, Yvonne. I'd like to endorse those thanks for the teams involved. It's a fantastic initiative. Yes, Councillor Skelton, on that subject.
I want to talk about that first, but just to say to Councillor Williams, obviously a lot of people share her trepidation, shall I say, about maths and feel that they're not the best at it. I think part of the issue is that in schools, certainly when you get to senior school, the people who teach maths are those that get it easily. And there are many in the population that don't get it easily. They need that extra step of explanation. And then they do get it. So I would say to Councillor Williams and anybody else that feels they're sort of struggling a bit with maths, it's not you can do it.
Thank you. So the other item I think we can probably all agree on is that we should welcome the extra grant in relation to the museums and arts galleries that will endorse and improve our already fantastic offer. So I think we can accept that. Yes, Councillor Schenker.
Just on one of the other items, Chair, 4.2. The large format digital advertising boards.
Sorry, Councillor Schenker, can I come to you in a second on that? Because
sure.
I'm going to introduce Martin has recommendations from last night on the other two remaining subjects. So, Martin, just introduce your
thank you, Chair. In relation to the Kingsway roundabout, the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet that it gives a full public update when discussions regarding the Kingsway Island will take place and what action we hope to see following the meeting. This was asked for by me and was agreed by Cabinet a number of months ago, so Scrutiny was a little bit surprised that hadn't already happened, because unfortunately we've seen thousands of people on a number of occasions now trapped in that retail park because of the poor arrangements for getting in and out of the site. So it is urgent. We don't, Christmas will be coming in a matter of months' time, and we need to make sure that those discussions take place with the owners of the retail site, Highways England, and the City Council, because alongside this we'll probably have proposals this summer potentially about the A38, and want to make sure that any works that perhaps are agreed actually will dovetail into that scheme. So there is a certain amount of urgency on this, and I think it's important that the public are given that update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Rachel, I'm struggling to see any value in discussing when we're going to talk about things and what we're going to talk about before we get any outcome from that discussion. I don't know what thoughts are.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This was obviously discussed last night at Executive Scrutiny, and this report is about the roundabout, which obviously is part of the development by Tiller Homes, and that is obviously on the public highway that the council has control over and clearly is in charge of. The issues we have in the retail park are on private land where we don't have any control mechanisms. We have tried, and many administrations over the past many years, previous administrations have tried to work with obviously officers in the council, with the landowners of that site to try and find a solution, and we are absolutely proactively offering opportunities and ideas about how we can pilot different ways of organising that site car parking to enable less of those congestion issues to take place. We're absolutely on trying to do more of that. our ability to bring them to the table is limited because we have limited control, and we are hopefully going to be using this opportunity for this additional funding to increase pedestrian access around the roundabout to use as a lever to try and get them to the table more effectively. So absolutely we're trying everything we can to try and do that, and we're happy to talk about that publicly, but it isn't, I think, under the council's control, and that's a really important distinction to be made around the issue with the retail park congestion and this roundabout.
And for my benefit, how will the outcomes of any discussions be conveyed and shared?
I mean, happy if we can find a solution with the landowners involved to make that public. Of course we would. I mean, clearly our incentive and our intention by working with them is to try and find a solution that reduces the inconvenience to our residents.
I think the public are looking for us to lead the way to bang some heads together, Chair. They're getting frustrated by our inaction. This was agreed by Cabinet a number of months ago and nothing's happened. That's the frustration of local people.
Councillor Shanker, was it on this you wanted to speak? Okay, the other recommendation from last night then, Councillor Repton.
The recommendation is as printed, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Skelton.
So I did just want to make some comments on the Kingsway roundabout scheme. How confident are we that it is going to work, what we're doing? Obviously, we've mention has been made of the issues with the retail park, which obviously is in separate ownership, and the A38, I think Grand Canyon roundabout as well, which all have interdependency with each other. So I'd just like some reassurance that this is going to work.
I'm sure we'd like to give those reassurances, but the timing and its connectivity with the A38 works is going to be crucial as well, Rachel, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And all I can give around assurance is this has been worked through with Homes England and clearly our contact also with Highways England to try and make sure we can minimise that, implications of any disruption that might be caused by those various different interdependencies, and do our best endeavours to do that. I can't have my hand on heart and guarantee there will be no issues because that's clearly not all in our control. We work as hard as we can with the relevant agencies who have some of that control to try and minimise it.
So, Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4.2, the large format digital advertising boards. Will be interesting, and I'm sure they'll follow any planning guidance and approvals for site locations and stuff, and that'll all be done sensibly. I'm just intrigued and was wondering whether the Cabinet Member for Finance maybe, I assume who the responsibility lies under, given everything we've said, not just today, but in previous meetings about good governance of the Council, and I've challenged that on a number of occasions in the last couple of years. But what do we actually mean by a flexible procurement approach? Councillor Smell?
I think what you're trying to pick out is that, if we're going to do anything that would be breaching our procurement procedures, but what we're trying to do here is to try and make sure that whatever we do conduct in the council with the business of doing these advertising boards, that will fulfil our procurement procedures. But we do have a degree of flexibility in any of our procurement rules that we enact. And Simon, I think, would you echo some of those same words? We won't be breaking any governance rules if that's what you're trying to get at, Councillor Shanker. Absolutely not.
Can I just explain before Simon comes in?
I'm sorry, say again.
Do you want me to just explain before Simon comes in, or do you want to go to Simon?
If you wish.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Councillor Smell's getting a bit sensitive. It talks about a flexible procurement approach, so I assume, just to help you, I assume it's not our existing procurement rules that we're trying to use here. We're trying to develop some more flexible procurement rules, as it says. But I'd just like to understand what they are before you agree to them.
Would you like me to put this up, Chair, as the Director with responsibility for procurement service? So, no, a flexible procurement approach is about using the existing procurement legislation as it currently stands in the contract procedure rules to allow the Council to adopt an approach which meets market requirements and also our requirements. Because this is a new procurement, it is therefore required to come to Cabinet. That is the requirement of the contract procedure rules that a new procurement should, and therefore it's describing that approach is that rather than sitting with a one-size-fits-all. We can use our current rules, our current, the current legislation to put in place a process and a procurement strategy that meets the council's needs. It doesn't suggest creating something new that isn't within current rules. It's about using our rules in the most appropriate way.
So, no conspiracy there. Simon, did you want to comment on the potential effect on the zero carbon ambitions of the council?
I wasn't going to, but obviously in our existing bus shelters and arrangements that we entered into previously, we've been looking at both digital advertising, and we also looked at like the green routes to bus stops, and as much as possible any of our procurement aspires to work with suppliers to be as net zero as possible, and where possible to have mitigations. And I think our bus shelters, which is an example of advertising, is moving in that direction. Thank you.
Sorry, just to drop it on you then, Simon. It was just for completeness, I was going to address the other recommendation from scrutiny last night in relation to its potential effect on zero emissions across the city, but my understanding of the digital display type advertising is that they are relatively climate change friendly, in that they're not they're digital, and they are LED and that sort of thing. So obviously, as part of the process of looking at this, then those sort of considerations will be taken into account. Good. All right. Any other questions or comments on that? So we have recommendations 2.1 to 210. Can they be agreed? Good. We've dealt with item 14. Item 15. Item 15. So the board resolved, or we resolved, that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussions of the following item on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I think we've lost the press from the hall. Is there somebody up in the gallery? It's all right. Okay, so we're okay.